I'd like to kick off the afternoon session with just a brief thank you again to our sponsors, Hydroflow and My Corporation. Give you a little bit more detail. Hydroflow Corporation is an aerospace company that's owned and operated by a president and key executive graduate from the business school, Dennis Ulrich, and his sister, Cindy Alouche, who is a member of the Graziadio Board of Visitors. Their late father started the company out of his garage when Dennis and Cindy were children. And today, Hydroflow engineers and manufactures components for every major aerospace company in the world, and next year will celebrate its 50th year in business. Deborah Sweeney, who is still with us in the back, she was on the panel this morning, is CEO and owner of My Corporation, and she holds both a JD and MBA degrees from Pepperdine. My Corporation is a leading provider of online document filing services for clients who wish to form a corporation or a limited liability company. In our fast pitch competition today, the winner of the fast pitch competition will receive an incorporation package from My Corporation that is valued at $1,400. And Deborah has asked me to remind everybody that if you pick up My Corporation's flyer out on the table in the hallway, you can enter a sweepstakes to also receive an incorporation package from her corporation. So Deborah, thank you again very much for your sponsorship of the event. Now I'd like to introduce John Shearer, who is the Graziadio Entrepreneur in Residence, who will introduce our next panel, Monetizing Your Idea. John?
Thanks, Doug. And we're going to make this pretty interactive this afternoon after lunch so that no one falls asleep. We're going to make everybody in the audience participate in this panel. But I also wanted to add on to some of the thank yous and recognize some folks. There's a group that we've put together that Larry touched on called the Senior Fellows, which are real supporters of everything that has to do with entrepreneurship in the Graziadio School, and they're amazing folks. And just to tell you how much effort and how much they give back to the university, they give a lot of time and help and support in many different ways. And we're fortunate enough to have actually 4 of them that participated in today's panels and helping. Like this morning, there was Susanna Cass. I don't know if Susanna's still here. And Bill Vogel. They're both senior fellows. We have Scott Alderton, who will be participating later this afternoon, and Arif Shakeel. And so I just want to personally thank these folks for how much they've done to help us promote in what we're doing here at the university, because me being kind of a relatively new, like Larry kind of parachuted me in here last year, what's going on here at the university and for anything to do with entrepreneurship actually is unique when you look at all the pieces that we have and how we're promoting it and how we're helping. And I think the statistics that Larry talked about is like how many folks are really creating businesses is, it's the proof in the pudding. Is showing that the curriculum and all these other things that we're doing to support innovation and entrepreneurship, it actually is working. I mean, that's an amazing statistic on what's going on there. So first, next what I'd like to do is actually first introduce the moderator and the panelist, and then give you a flavor of our backgrounds and why this should be fun, and why I'm the 4th grader that Larry talks about. That's my position in life, is to be the, come up with the ideas and the feasibility. So I get to be a 4th grader for the rest of my life, I believe. So first we have Arif Shakeel, who he's an amazing person. I mean, who here uses like anything digital where you have to store information? Okay, good, okay. How many of you have purchased a Western Digital product? How many have not? You got to go. You probably have and you didn't know it. Arif's amazing. He was with Western Digital for quite a while. He was at one point he was the CEO. He's now currently a board member. He is the expert in when someone has a good idea and they've proven that there's a market for it and that you can make money with it. He's the expert on how do you deliver, how do you get it done when it gets to the logistics. So he figures out how to maximize the monetization, how you actually extract the value. Right? Then you have Sherylle, and she's with UCSB, and she is like the facilitator of all the ideas and all the innovations that come out of UCSB. It's that little school that also has a nice view up the way. And so she has to see all these ideas and these innovations and look through all of it and figure out which ones are worth commercializing and how do you partner with the external entities or the internal teams to create businesses. And her background is she's a lawyer and a musician. So you've got the expert, the engineering and the statistics and the logistics and everything in Arif. Then you have the lawyer and musician who's like taking these ideas. And then next we have Andrea Belz, who also is, she's a grad of the program here. She's also a PhD in physics. I've got a physics background, so she gets a blend of physics, musicians, lawyers, and absolute experts in execution. And Andrea is an amazing gift that she knows how to do product, of the many things, is product design and how do you develop a product. So you've got the ideas to develop the product to the delivery. You need all of that for monetization. So that, in a nutshell, is the team. And I'm going to turn it over to Arif from there. And you got to deal with physicists and
ideas first. Then we're going to, so he made a mistake. It's going to be on Andrea. Or I could go. I mean, mine is the end. Here's the deal.
I agree. Yours is the end of the
Exactly.
process.
Exactly.
I
You
think-
are in the fourth grade, John.
You got to know where your strengths and weaknesses are.
That's right. That's right. Honesty is a big part of it. I'd be happy to start talking about monetizing your idea. Monetizing is a word that's kind of a catch-all. What does it really mean? Well, what it means is thinking about how your great idea turns into something that people will buy. And if you haven't really thought through your value proposition, and that's kind of lingo, but it really is critical because it tells you a lot about how to actually buy or package your product and how your customer will buy it. So, for instance, some of you may have read the book, The Cutting Edge. It's a book about the history of Gillette. And we talk about the razor blade model for a good reason. Before that, it was kind of a death-defying exercise to get a shave from the barber. And it was Gillette's insight that you could use modern manufacturing techniques to make razor blades that would eventually not be useful and that you would have to replace. And so the essence of the razor blade model is that the razor is cheap and the blades are expensive. And the customer wins because it's still cheaper to buy more blades than a new razor, and the company wins because the margins are much higher on the blades. So it's really a win-win situation. And this applies not just to razor blades, but it applies to software. Your cell phone is probably a razor blade model where you don't pay much for the cell phone, but you pay a lot for the plan. The cost of text messages has doubled in the last year, the cost to us. The cost of delivering them has fallen. So it's a question of understanding how your idea can be parceled out in order to create different types of revenue streams. The iPod is another example of this. A song is 99 cents. That's really great. And so Apple has designed this entire ecosystem so that you continue to buy from them. So a big piece of monetizing your idea is to think about how your idea might be structured in such a way to create the kind of relationship with your customer that you're interested in. I will turn it over to Sherylle right now, but I'm sure it'll come back.
All right, so I think what she said is spot on, and it's got to do with how do you actually get the money from your idea. But from my perspective, working at the university, at a research-intensive university, they're called, is you're not going to monetize your idea unless it actually works. You might monetize it a little. There's like a clean tech bubble. You might get some VCs to invest, but ultimately it needs to work for long-term monetization. And I just wanted to maybe be the Monty Python and now for something completely different and focus a little bit on how do you as an entrepreneur, with that great idea, thinking it's likely feasible, translate it into working. And there's a few ways that any research university can help. So I just kind of wanted to lay them out and encourage you guys to keep us in mind, not just UCSB, any university that does strong research is going to have all of these resources available. The first one is we might already have a innovation or technology that helps your idea work. That's a lot of what John and I will do together. For example, we have 600 inventions. We're dominating in engineering. If you have a semiconductor, an idea for better semiconductors, if you have an idea for a better polymer, chances are we already have some intellectual property and a way of doing it that may or may not fit. So that's called the technology transfer function. We can also help you develop your technology further. If you don't know quite why something works, we can help you understand why so you can make a better pitch through doing research for your company. We can also help take your idea a little farther along. So that's another great way. A resource that's not very well known in universities that can help monetize your idea and by making it work is all the research-intensive universities have facilities available for use by all companies, including yours. For example, we have a clean room. For those of you that know electronics, we can do all sorts of semiconductor growth and things. And literally, we have about $1 billion worth of research equipment in there, bought by the government. You can rent it for the day. What you do in there becomes your own IP. So we can actually have facilities that help defer the cost of building up a laboratory that you can actually hire and you can retain control of your project and retain ownership of your IP. And then the last thing we have is we have expertise to hire, and our Dean of Engineering, Matt Terrell, had a great pitch on it. You can get the best research talent in the world, and you can get us really cheap because you pay as you go. So you can literally do a sponsored project with one of our 6 Nobel laureates, and if he works for you 3% time, that's all you pay. You pay for the actual cost of supplies and indirect cost. So again, it's a really good relationship from an economic perspective. So these are all just very, 50,000-foot view, but ways that if you are working on monetize idea, working on whether it's actually going to work beyond paper, a research university can help. And my last comment will just be, think beyond just science and engineering. Granted, we have a #1 materials group and we have a #1 or 2 engineering. So yes, we can do great engineering work for you and great science. But we also have a Nobel laureate in economics. There might be really interesting projects you can do with our economics. We have a survey center. We're just one university, but we have a survey center. You want to do market research? They'll help you design a survey. They'll conduct the market research a lot cheaper than an outsourcing private firm might do. So that's basically my sum, is to make it work. There's a lot of different paths you have to prove it up, but the research university can be a very good choice economically.
Okay, so, thank you, Sherylle. So you heard the idea, the engineering, and what I'll talk to you about is how do you take an idea and bring it to market? So just like there are 3 of us on the panel, I divide up a product into the market into 3 areas. The concept, a lot of times you see a product and you see a sale. I came up with that idea. I had that thought. Having the idea is very important, but turning it into a product is just as important. So the first thing is, how do you solve, is there a problem in the market you're trying to solve? There are 2 kinds of products: the cool products and the products that solve a problem. Sometimes a cool product can solve a need in the market. So pay attention to 3 things: concept, but concept in itself is not going to get you the money unless you think of how do you engineer the product. Then you got to take it to the next phase and say, how do you is it a manufacturable product? You could come up with an idea that requires technology that doesn't exist today. Well, that's a good idea on a shelf, but you can't really make a whole lot of money with it. So in the world of technology, you've got to come up with an idea that utilizes current technology to solve a problem in the market or makes a fashion statement. iPhone was both a fashion statement and it solved a problem. The product life cycle goes usually from a cool product to a product that solves a problem and then it becomes price sensitive. So keep those three things in mind. Ideas, super important. Making sure that it can be engineered, very important. But then can it be manufactured in such a way that it can be sold into the marketplace that either it solves a problem or it's a fashion statement in technology. With that, I will open it up to questions. And as my friend John said, this has to be an interactive thing. You guys got to ask us questions. So far away.
Or we'll just fill your heads with lies.
How would I approach a research university if I had an idea that could utilize maybe the technologies they have, such as the 600 different ideas that you represent? How would I approach?
That's actually a great question. Most universities, with the exception of MIT, which don't market because they don't have to, that's their line, you will find most of the available technologies on the website of the Technology Transfer Office. The Technology Transfer Office, which is what I do, it can have fun names. We're Technology and Industry Alliances. But the Technology Licensing Office is always wide open because we live and die by people who want to monetize our ideas. You'll also see sometimes corporate affiliates programs that'll do it. But the other one that I really recommend is it's absolutely fine to directly approach the faculty member. So for those of you that are in or familiar with science and technology, the way I always recommend, if you're monitoring the academic literature, you're going to know which scientist at UCSB did that idea, and just approach them directly, and they'll wrap us in when they need to. But also, it's kind of a simple statement, but people forget it. Don't just go to your local university. If you are looking at a technology that's, in polymers, what you want to do is look at the top-ranked universities in polymers. Look at their publications and go to the faculty from there. So I'd say the two biggest ones are Tech Transfer Office, because they're at every single university, and we do outreach and marketing, and directly to the faculty themselves. If it's a big faculty like Nobel laureate, someone like a tech transfer director often can do an entree introduction to them and help get their attention.
Go ahead.
I think pricing is one of the most neglected areas by entrepreneurs. And it really is a strategic decision. So what is probably the best way or your recommended way of going about coming up with the right price for your product or service?
Let me first make sure that everybody understands the greatest myth in the world. Pricing has nothing to do with cost.
Very true.
You have no power over pricing. You may think you do, but you don't. A successful company accepts what the market is willing to pay and makes sure that their engineering and manufacturing is such that they can make money at that particular price. So for an entrepreneur, like I said, by the way, you don't have to have the coolest idea in the world to make $1 bazillion. You just need to solve a problem and makes people's lives easy, better, cooler. So the pricing question, when you would do the analysis on the front end, you have an idea. You say to yourself, it solves a particular problem. You look at the existing solution. I would discount that existing solution by 20 to 25%, because nobody wants to move to a new product unless there's something in it for them. It makes their life better, and it's a cheaper product to buy. So for the sake of analysis, take 20 to 25% off an existing solution And then say to yourself, how would you engineer the product based on what your gross margin appetite is? And then you will come up with the answer, gee, is it a doable product or not? So it's a great question. You start with you can't do anything about price. Price is the price is the price. Then you figure out current solution, discounted by X%, I suggest 20 to 25%. And if that price, after discounting it, you can make, based on what the product is, 30 to 35%, you have a good idea now that can probably go forward.
I can't second that enough. Management determines cost, and the market determines price. And often I hear entrepreneurs and people that I thought were more seasoned who say things to me like, well, we can't cover our costs at that price. And I tell them, that's really your problem. Because there is nothing you can do about price. Price really is determined by the marketplace. I really love the idea of just starting with a 25% discount off the existing solution. I think that's very sensible because you have a very difficult time raising prices.
What happens if there's not an existing solution in the market?
There is an existing solution.
I beg your pardon, say that again?
He said, what if there's no existing solution?
Okay, I got an answer for you. If there is no existing solution for it, ask yourself, what are people willing to pay for that product? It's not that difficult.
So
You got to be.
research or something. Maybe.
You don't have to do market research. Just remember, you don't have to go to the moon to make $1 bazillion. If it is a product that's a new idea, if it doesn't solve somebody's problem, gosh, that's a tough putt. And if it solves somebody's problem, sorry, but if it solves somebody's problem, there must be a solution that exists. I mean, I can't think of iPod. You may say, well, there wasn't anything before iPod. Well, guess what? There were MP3 players. There were Discmen. There were other products. Exactly. So there always is if you search long enough. One more thing about cost. As an example, you guys know I'm very old, but I'll give you an example of how old I really am. When I started in the storage business, we used to sell 10 megabytes. $4,500. I swear, couldn't make enough of it. Made $1 bazillion. Today, we sell a terabyte, $49. Still make money. The point is, if there are two kinds of companies. If you fight the price, I got news for you. You're going to have a bad day. If you accept the price and you can't make money at it, go into another business.
Well, that's the manufacturability you've been talking about.
No, the whole thing. Engineering and manufacturability.
Right.
Yes.
If I can, I'm sorry, one thing that I see all the time with my entrepreneurs that are coming out of Santa Barbara, they're professors to students. Also, I'm going to say particularly for those of you that are going to go into business in an area of expertise, like you're a biologist and you're going to go into life sciences, don't get caught up in the elegance of the science or the elegance of the academics, of the technology you're working with. Because time and time again, when you're dealing in an area you really love and you find that just phenomenal idea, you're just so in love with the way the idea works, you forget Arif and Andrea's advice. So you really have to, when I talk to our science and engineers, it's almost like they really need to have an out-of-body experience. It just doesn't matter how cool the science is when it comes to the marketplace. So watch that little trap for those of you that are going to business in an area that you truly love and truly know a lot about.
That's a real good. Let me just add one thing. Hang on, John.
He's hanging on.
Oh, I know he is. See, this is a really important point. Just think about it. I think somebody really smart said this. If you can't take a really, really complex thing and make it really simple, you don't understand that. There is a PhD from Caltech, smartest people in the world. She made it so simple for you. That's what makes her smart, not because she has a PhD. So don't make things complex. Oh, I've got this idea, it's gonna... No. Boil it down to the bottom line. Can you explain to somebody what it is in 30 seconds or a minute? just like you meet somebody and you say, what do you do? If they take more than 10 seconds to tell you what they do, they don't have a real job. Watch this, go ahead. So my point is, the brilliance is to take something super complicated and make it simple. That's what really smart people do. Not so smart people take something that's sort of complex and make it even more complex. But in the product, it's super important what she said. You've got to take that to heart. So you had a question about
I want to just say one more thing on that, which is there are very beautiful love affairs that entrepreneurs have with their business plans. And it's a wonderful thing to witness. And they rarely get funded. And when they do get funded, they often lose money for a whole lot of people. So I absolutely encourage you to go out and seek additional expertise, find someone who's a sensible sounding board, find the crankiest person you know and get their input on it. Because I agree entirely. If you can't explain it simply, and if that person doesn't hear what you're saying, your idea is not ready yet.
Yeah, one thing on the idea thing is that, and this is a crime that's committed by most entrepreneurs at the idea stage, is they have a vision and a passion for a solution that they have, an idea, and they put a market value on it here. And that's fine. Just remember that if it's a market of one and you're the only buyer, you're the only one that's going to pay that. You got to go out and you got to find out what does everybody else want to pay for that. So it's not having that love affair or you need that out of body experience. It's like, yeah, even if you have the solution as far as the pricing for you, what will everyone else pay for that? Not what you would personally pay for it, because you definitely pay a lot more than it's worth.
And an amusing aside, we get about 100 disclosures a year, and I bet about 50 of them are going to make UCSB $1 billion when it walks in the door. And these are very smart people, extremely smart on good technology, but, everyone loves their baby.
You had a question.
I'm curious, can product differentiation within a market segment temper your need to reduce the price by 25% before it hits the market?
No. Your business plan, if it doesn't stand on its feet with the most rigorous price entry, then you're taking a bigger risk. It's possible, but you remember, you gotta make sure that it passes that litmus test. It may be okay at 10%, but you gotta be hard on yourself to account for the things that you don't know are going to happen.
Another way to say that is that you have to assume that people are going to take a discount in order to take on the increased risk. Because whatever their solution, they're using it. And so to switch to your solution involves risk. And your job as management is to reduce risk everywhere, just to wring it out of the system. And if you cannot do that at a lower price point, you will not survive in the marketplace.
Now, mind you, you don't have to price it that way. This is just your business plan. Once you come out with it, and you can make money at, let's say, $199, and then you find out you can sell it at $249, that's all gravy. But if you plan it at $249 and you got to sell it at $199, gosh, you got a bad business right there, right?
That's a problem.
You don't want to do that.
Any other questions?
Plan for the worst, hope for the best kind of thing.
Oh, come on, guys.
That's it.
There's nobody in here with ideas they want to monetize?
There we go.
If we do a technology transfer that's CSP, what does this really take? Maybe ownership, maybe royalties?
Well, it's going to be really hard to wrestle ownership away from a university, and that's because whoever owns it controls it, and we need access to it to continue our academic research. So we will give you exclusive license. The only significant effect that could have is standing to sue to enforce the patent. The UC system has never said no. We've always stood with you. So an exclusive license will essentially give you ownership. And as far as the remainder of the terms, it really depends on the university and it depends on the technology and the market. I do think there was an era where universities had an inflated sense of value on their technology. I think that era's over.
That's when I bought.
Yeah. Some universities do it better than others. But there's usually a royalty. There's usually annual fees to maintain that license. And the unique part of university is we ask you to commit to actively develop it, because my whole role is to encourage your companies not only to license, but to create a product that's going to benefit the public from my researchers' work. It does me no good if you shelve it. So we do ask companies to commit to, based on your business plans, to developmental timelines, which is a little different than I think a B2B license. I think probably what I'd recommend the most when you enter a tech transfer office for the first time, regardless of who it is, pay attention to their mission statement. And the sort of insightful thing I've always found, just knowing various offices, ask them what their senior administration's goals are for their office and how they're funded. And that's going to tell you a lot about how they're going to approach the financials of a license agreement. And I know I can also pass that test. No, because, for example, we're very, very much, our mission is relationships. We want to not only do the one deal with you, we want to do 10 as you're a serial entrepreneur. So we're going to approach pricing maybe a little differently than another university whose chancellor sees tech transfer as a way of generating revenue.
And I think that's a key point, being a buyer of technology. That I've made a career out of finding innovations in commercial labs and universities and helping other people license out. That's a tough question to answer because I could give you 15 different examples of how it's done, and they were all different. And so, like Sherylle's group just happens to be, I guess, the more innovative and one of the newer tech transfer offices. I believe.
Yeah, we were in 2005.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you didn't have a lot of the historical baggage
Yes.
that was actually institutionalized in my view across a lot of the universities in the United States. There was a viewpoint that was their money stream, and so that's why the prices were high and so on. So it's starting to go away, and with a group like Sherylle's, it's more of a realistic commercial arrangement. So it's a lot easier to do a deal. There are some schools that are just nightmares.
And,
But if you need it, you gotta get it.
Sorry,
Yeah.
too much caffeine. One else part, just bringing on John Shearer, when you go to a technology transfer office, just realize the model grew up in the biotech. So sometimes you see a business structure bias towards biotech. And some offices are just not quite as comfortable moving off that model, into other markets. So the key thing to do, and just as take-home points, always treat the university positions with respect. We're really good at acting like a business, but we're not, especially state-funded ones. There are places we can't go in indemnification warranty. So understand that. Don't expect us to always act like a business. And tell us as much as you can about your business plan, about your product. Because without a doubt, the companies that hold everything close to the vest because they're concerned about leakage from the university, I have a very hard time negotiating with because I don't know why they're saying no. I can't find workarounds. The ones that take us as a partner, if you will, and give us the business plan confidentially, that really sit down and say the reason this is a problem is because, are the ones that not only can we negotiate really easily with, but when your company needs a little variances, maybe you need a funding round and it's going slower, the university knows about your company well enough that we can feel confident giving you some flexibility and maybe doing a few things we wouldn't typically do to give your company a chance to survive. So that's a very important part of the relationship.
Yeah, go ahead.
You've been talking a lot about product. I'm wondering, is there a difference in how you would monetize, if you're talking about the service business, being it retail or hospitality, would you take a different approach?
No.
Or the same?
No, a product is
Service is a
something that's
product.
priced that you sell. So in that sense, a service, I work as a consultant, and I am thinking through product development all the time, even though what I'm offering is services. All of the same math applies. What is the cost to you of delivering your time, your product, whatever it is, to the customer? And so all of those same arguments apply. In fact, because there's so much crossover now between services and products anyway, things that we used to think of as products are now services and vice versa, and there's software as a service. You have to go through that math rigorously, no matter what you're planning to sell.
Yeah, but I wouldn't approach a technology transfer.
No.
It's unlikely that there would be something there.
I'm just trying to.
Well, the reason that technology transfer is so interesting is because a patent serves as a very effective barrier to entry for your competitors. So if you have another way of creating an effective barrier to entry for your service or for whatever, you can achieve the same goals that technology companies have. That's why angel investors like technology companies. That's why venture capitalists do. It's a very straightforward, again, it's making things simple. You know, people hear patent, then they hear barrier to entry, then they hear no competition, and then they smile. It's like,
But you know, you brought up a really, really good point, and you're absolutely right. The one thing that everybody, once again, think of this way, you know, in order to be an entrepreneur, you don't need to understand space, polymers, heat transfer, microprocessors. You don't. So take an existing market. I'm sure a lot of you guys are car fans. You live in Southern California, for crying out loud, so you have to. AMG was an independent company. You see that sign at the back of Mercedes-Benz's that says AMG now? AMG used to be an independent company. All they did was they take a Mercedes-Benz and they would soup it up for you. They would put bigger tires, bigger manifold, made your Mercedes go faster, made your Mercedes look cooler. They never developed the car. What they did was took an existing product, made it so spiffy that Mercedes-Benz said, we should be doing this. They went and bought the company for $1 bazillion. So don't be caught up in this, you gotta invent the next iPhone or gotta go to the moon. No, you just gotta have an idea that solves a problem. And everybody can't be an entrepreneur sitting in a room, just like a musician can't be, I think, sit in a room and say, I gotta come up with a song. It's okay to work for a company, and as you see problems, don't use company's time to come up with ideas, but let's say there is a problem that your product creates that nobody is solving. Try to take things and make them simple. Don't think that everybody who is an entrepreneur understands engineering and science. It's not necessary. We live in California, so a lot of our companies are technology-oriented companies, or you hear about Cisco and Apple, but there are lots of companies that are service-oriented companies that are in the consulting business, that are in all kinds of other businesses. So don't limit yourself and say, well, I don't know anything about engineering, so I can't be an entrepreneur. Not so. Or, gee, I can't come up with an idea of a brand new product. Not so. Take a product that exists. Can you make it better? Last example, I know this is not much, but you see this little thing around my iPhone? It's the skin. Somebody did the skin for it. They didn't invent the iPhone. Now, are they going to make $1 bazillion? No, but they'll make enough to go to the next step, perhaps. So don't limit yourself. You know, you guys are all really bright people. So just say to yourself, how does my idea solve a problem? If it doesn't, take a break.
I
would
have
add-
one, oh, sorry.
Just add one.
It prompted a lot of thought. Lots of hands went up at the same time, too. One thing I would like to suggest is that you just look online at the Business Week lists of the 50 most innovative companies. And they will organize the list. It's done by Interbrand, maybe. I forget, but it's a Business Week list. And they'll list these innovative companies and then what they're innovative in. And so, for instance, Walmart appears in that list. And you may not think of Walmart as innovative, but the more you learn about their logistics and how they handle distribution, there are a lot of creative innovations in there. And they were one of the first to take on RFID tags for their supply chain management. So look at that list and see how many different ways there are to be innovative. You do not have to be a rocket scientist. Actually, I do a lot of consulting at JPL, and I can tell you that even rocket science isn't rocket science. It's just, it doesn't have to be that hard. Look at things in a little bit different way, and you will find opportunities to make money.
And also, just to confuse you, since you're all bright people, I'll even challenge necessarily that you need a patent to be in a technology company. One of our recent wildfire successes up in Santa Barbara is we're becoming a nice center of cloud computing, and we've spun off quite a few companies, and one great example is called Eucalyptus. The Obama administration used them as an example of accelerating tech transfer from universities, so we were thrilled. Open source is the key, has been the key to cloud computing. The business advantages are not in the patent world. And arguably, not necessarily in the copyright world, although they hold back some things, right, with copyright, they are open source companies. So I wouldn't assume even in a technology area necessarily that you need patents or lockstep copyright. You need to think through those assets and how you're going to deploy them in a strategic way, and you can make bazillions of dollars with open
See,
source.
bazillion
Yeah,
dollars catching up.
inflation.
Every time somebody says that, I get a penny. No, there are people going to be waiting outside to collect money from you guys. So see, that
Talk
was
about
my,
monetizing
that
an
was
idea
my
there.
idea, and that's how I monetize it. See, I'm not a space. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, I mean, even within the technology sector, open source is a classic citrus, eucalyptus, appfolio, all making money without any sort of patents behind it.
How important is it if you're coming up with a product and you're proposing and you're going through these steps that you're looking at the product life cycle to understand either A, how am I going to have a future reducing the cost of making the product, or bringing enough features in so I can stay ahead of the competition?
You're
Yes,
putting-
very important.
But you're putting the cart before the horse. I mean, just think about it.
One product at a time.
One product, get to the market first, make a couple of dollars. Then start thinking, because as you go to the market, there will be 500 million problems that you had now never thought of that will happen to you. While you're solving that problem, time will go. That's when you start to think. Because a lot of times, as you're solving those problems, you may come up with the next product. A lot of times, technology companies come up with a product, run into a couple of issues, and then they have the new and improved version. How do you think that came about? Because they ran into an issue. So don't start thinking 4 or 5 products at a time. Take a product, keep it simple, 25% discount. Can you manufacture it? Can you design it? Solves a problem. Okay, let's go to the market, and then the fun really begins. And believe me, if you immerse yourself, the market will tell you what the next product is. So you don't have to sit back and scratch your head and say what the market will tell you. That makes sense?
So you need to be prepared for that.
Well,
Yeah.
there's an interesting thing, because timing is everything. So you have to be really aware of the entire competitive scene, both from everything from supply chain to other competitors and things like that, because you could have the best solution, a new product, but if you've hit the market at the wrong time, you might, and in many cases, you could be early, it's a disaster.
Well, tablet PCs, right? That was a great example.
Which PC? I'm sorry?
The tablet PCs.
Yeah.
Been around forever. Now you got an iPad and everybody thinks it's new, but
Well, and before that, the handheld.
They monetized it.
Was not the first, right?
They monetized the idea.
That's right.
That's all they
That's
did.
right.
Yeah.
So,
There's a book, it's called The Innovator Solution. It answers all of your questions.
well, okay,
Then we're done.
Specific question.
okay. All
As
right.
opposed to the general question. Scott has been trying to ask a question for a long
I
time.
have a question for Sherylle. So you said that you won't let go of the IP, so you're going to license it to me. So how narrowly or broadly of a license am I going to be able to get from you?
That's gonna vary by the university, and unfortunately, we do have a perception in the public that somehow exclusive is bad, because it's better to non-exclusive and have everybody get a chance to use it. When we all know in reality, we really do need to give some level of exclusivity, particularly in a startup. So universities handle that balance differently. At UCSB, as long as you're actively developing it, and we know you're actively developing, we're very comfortable with an exclusive. Sometimes with things like a new material, I'll pick on polymers because I keep mentioning them, there might be multiple markets, and it's clear you're not going to be working in certain markets. Or I have one right now, it's the detection of certain biological particles. And one company, I know all they do is medical diagnostic. They're not going to do contamination of dirt in an Afghanistan battlefield. So yes, I am doing a field of use in that case, because I know they're not going to actively develop
But
it.
if I can make my case to you, like Doris, if I can make my case to you that I'm going to get this product, I'll make a few bucks, but then I'm going to get this product, this product, this product, you'll give me the whole license up front.
Absolutely. If you're willing and it's funny, we say we want you to be capable of commercialization. We know it's with startups, there's no 2020. You've got to have the right basic chance is kind of how I do it. And in fact, that brings up a good point, because one of the things I'm seeing in the bio area, frankly, is licensees are coming to me and they're saying, and their business plan is to hit the forensics market or the veterinary market, or maybe food safety markets, things that require less regulation than the FDA-approved diagnostic or therapeutic compound, to bootstrap. Let's make some money in insurance labs about whether, this particular drug of abuse is involved in a car accident, and then we can take that money and bootstrap the FDA approvals so it can end up in hospitals and point of care in doctors. So as long as you have plans like that, we're absolutely thrilled. And when you're a startup, most universities understand that your investors are going to want to see as broad and exclusive as possible. So again, this comes in to tell us everything. Show us how you're going to use it, and we can take a risk of a little broader exclusive.
Okay, then follow-up question. So since you own the technology, I license this great digital storage technology from you, and I start my startup.
You better not, I'll sue you.
For $1 gazillion.
No matter what it is.
And everybody sues me. So I don't know the technology I licensed it from you. Are you going to step up and defend the patent?
Well, okay, first thing I'll say is if he's suing you, it means you've probably already entered the market and you're making lots of money, or he wants to acquire you. So that's usually not necessarily.
No, I just want to sue
illegal.
him because I already have he's infringing on one of my patents.
Ah, okay. Well, if you're infringing on his patent, we love you dearly,
Have a
but that's
nice
your
day.
problem. No, because if my patent might get invalidated because there's one of his.
See, the application of a patent on a product, patent by itself could stand and be viable, but the application of that patent in conjunction with something else will infringe on my patent. So what you got from her was a patent. What you didn't get from her was the application of the patent in a particular environment.
Or you didn't get permission to use his patent. So in our
Which we'll
typical
never get.
scenario of enforcement, and this is the way with 90% of universities, I'd say 99, but I think it's 99, you as a company decide if you want to enforce our patent. And that's a very important point, because if you do it, there are mechanisms in the law that could result in my patent being challenged. You might not want my patent challenged. You might want to let it stand for a while, right? So it's your decision to enforce.
Right.
When you do enforce, we don't have tons of money sitting around. Usually your war chest is what's paying for the costs. You do get a greater recovery because of that, of the share. And then our job, because of a legal principle called standing, is as exclusive licensee, you might not be able to bring that lawsuit without the university as owner standing with you. Universities take that very seriously, and like I said, we get asked it occasionally by our companies, and beyond one openly frivolous lawsuit, the university has never failed to stand beside our licensee. But if you think about it, and this is one thing about tech transfer in universities, I think is just from a mindset important to think about, we never sell products, right? Ever. The reason we're getting a patent is either you're already there saying, I need an incentive to develop that research. I need a barrier to others joining the marketplace before I'm going to invest what I need for you to do your research. And you might be there when I file, but you might be there 10 years later. But essentially, philosophically, I'm getting patent rights for the benefit of a company who's going to commercialize it. So if there were none of you in the world, universities wouldn't get patents. That's key to the university philosophy on things like, we ask you to lead enforcement. You could look at that as we're cheap, or you could look at it as you know your market, you know your field, you know how that patent interplays, and you're the one that needs it, right, to protect. So we're deferring to you. But it's kind of strange with universities because we love, trumpeting about patents, but really we're getting them for you, at the end of the day. And that's kind of a philosophical concept just to keep in your head when you work with us.
What is your take on the business plan of Web 2.0 companies who offer their software for free, services for free, and they project advertising revenue or charging a premium for their service a few years later?
I'll defer to my business colleagues on that.
Yeah, that's kind of a generic question. I mean, I think there is nothing wrong with having a product that throws the line out and you catch a fish later. You need to have the money to make sure that you're paying for everything because there's no revenue for a period of time and you can sustain that. Usually, that is a risky proposition simply because unless you have a super unique product, even you give it out for free, the implementation of that software into anything requires money. And therefore, if it was a good idea, you probably ask some money for it. Just because you're giving it out for free, a lot of the companies will not implement it because the cost of implementation of a software on any product and or the services is pretty expensive depending on. So I know I didn't give you a succinct answer, but it is a doable thing. That's all I can tell you.
That was one of our clients, Skype. That was their business model, and they made $1 bazillion.
Yep. So it can work.
You're going to owe him some money after this, you know.
Oh, no. I have no license with you, so what you're doing is to just help me out, so I'm sorry, I can't give you anything. What else? Yeah.
Sherylle, sorry to keep me.
Oh, that's okay.
You know the TMP program, Technology Management Program, Santa Barbara. How involved are you guys in that?
We're actually quite involved with them. They're a good program. For those of you that don't know, the Technology Management Program was developed at UCSB to teach business principles to our science engineers and other non-business folks, since we don't have the benefit of an MBA program. And I'll just say it provides a wonderful foundation for our engineers and our scientists to use and to go forward with. And we support them any way we can. And then we have a complementary service called the Catapult program we just launched with actually a colleague of Andrea's helping us, which is providing one-on-one, real customized support to our startups.
Who's the colleague?
Dina?
Oh, Dina.
Yeah, Dina.
She's the one.
So if you are a UCSB licensee, you can get a really solid foundation through the TMP. And then we have a person working in our office that will specifically help you fill in the areas of, let's say, weakness for your particular company and your particular position at that time. So we kind of complement each other very well.
I think we need to leave.